a bad process automated is still a bad process. And AI and automation will just make a situation worse unless that situation is good. So back to the Theory of Constraints book, the constraint will move to another one. Once you solve one, it's like whack-a-mole. You have to then find the next one. So then we had to fix the next problem.
Welcome back to KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. I am your host, Keith Norris. Our guest today is John Hetherington. John has spent more than 25 years helping CFOs and COOs turn ambitious boardroom growth targets into measurable operational results. John began his career with Deloitte and Ernst & Young in the UK and North America, where he led several large-scale finance transformation programs. He has since founded We Deliver Your Vision, a firm focused on closing the gap between strategy and execution. He's got a straightforward approach, but powerful, where he identifies the single constraint preventing an operation from reaching its target, works alongside the client team to remove it, and then prove that the business result actually improved, not simply changed a process. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Keith. That intro sounds very impressive. I've got some things to live up to, but yeah, great to be here.
That was awesome. Well, John, we like to always start this podcast off with a little question we call the spark. Tell us, it sounds like you've been in this discipline for a long time, but when did it first come to you that you're like, this is going to be what I devote my professional career to?
That's a great question, because when I was younger, it's probably stems from a little bit of the war mentality of growing up in the UK, and my parents and grandparents hated wasted time, wasted effort, wasted money, and that's what I grew up around. It's how can we make the most of what we have? And so that was a great discipline to have. But then it also translated into the business world in terms of we see this waste of time, effort, and money now. And I get frustrated not only in my own business, but seeing other people not live their best lives and waste time not spending time with their family or what they really love. And so spend a long time early in my career figuring how do we help more companies and people achieve that time back in their lives. And that's where we landed on the process optimization, the streamlining, and finding the constraint, because at the end of the day, I'm a bit of a nerd and a geek, and that's what I love most.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the connection there of, I guess you'd say, like helping people enjoy their work more. That's something I resonate with as well. I always find it so sad when you see somebody who hates what they're doing because they're in a bad role or a bad job or a bad process. And it seems like that's part of your perspective as well. So you've worked in some very large firms, and you've since broken away to build your own firm. What are some of the pros and cons there that have brought you to building your own firm?
Well, it's as with any entrepreneur, any business owner, you always looking for the next business, always making sure you've got a pipeline to pay your staff and cash flow. So the mechanics of running a business are both exciting and scary at the same time. But again, it's a case of how do we focus on the right things? And a coach, mentor told me early in my career, it's not about the output, it's about the outcomes. So a lot of what I use on a day-to-day basis with my team and my own business, and also with my clients, is how do we get recognition for your hard work? Because just being busy isn't the answer. The more meetings, more teams, more chat is sometimes needed, but it's not always the most productive way to spend our time. So thinking about the outcome, and specifically the functionality, the feelings, and the facts involved in what you're delivering really helps frame how we think. And even just day to day, just thinking about that before you start the day, about how are we going to direct our time and work to our best selves is just a good mantra to live by.
That's such an interesting topic that could go deep into. I think that there's a really kind of an interesting relationship between this desire to want to live your best life, enjoy what you're doing at work, but also this intense focus on things like processes. It almost seems like polar in some ways, but it's oddly connected. So
yes. It is, and I love a good framework. I'm a process guy. Ever since I was young, I love the Meccano sets and Lego and FX kits and building things with instructions. The Tamiya radio controlled cars, the Tamiya Fox. If anyone had any of those, I love the creation of something and you see the picture, you see the aircraft or the car that you're building, and then you work through the instructions to build it. And that's what I do now, is a case of what's that end goal, that target that we want to meet, be it a financial target, a growth target, or even just a lifestyle target in terms of how you want to spend your time, more time with your family or more vacations. And then we create that process roadmap to get there. And the example I always like to jump into is something as simple as Starbucks and getting your coffee in the morning, because we got to get that caffeine. And I noticed a few years ago how they quickly introduced the app where you can order online, which seems obvious when you think about it. But before that, you lined up for a coffee. And what Starbucks realized, which is similar to our framework, is the constraint was not the baristas or the coffee machine, but it was actually the till is physically taking payment, because historically we always go to a till and pay for something with a card, which we can still do. But with the mobile, we can work around that. And that's actually part of the 5-step process that we have. And this is where the Starbucks example holds so true, because number one is you find the constraint. In this case, the till ordering the coffee was causing the lineup. You then second point is you question why we do it, because our inherent habit is to pay for something at the till. So then the third point is, how do we delete that? How do we delete something from the process? So the till, we can't get rid of the till, but we can avoid it by having a mobile payment. Then you simplify what's left in the 4th step, which is a specific pickup area for the mobile payments, and everyone else can continue to go to the till if they want to. And then finally, the 5th step is the automation, which is where the mobile app comes in to make sure that the payments are processed and money's taken and the coffee's ordered, ready to go. So those 5 steps are our process, which we've refined over many years to help companies, especially growing companies, find that constraint and achieve that growth target that they want to meet.
So definitely hear this focus on the constraint, and I think of this entire discipline of the theory of constraints, and
exactly,
the book The Goal, which a lot of people point back to, and kind of
Eliyahu Goldratt is an amazing book. I'd recommend a read. That's if we get onto book recommendations, The Goal is definitely on the list.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of these things with continuous improvement are at some level, they just feel like good common sense, but occasionally you get these like a book that pulls it all together and teaches the story. And as far as business books go, a very interesting read, I guess you would say.
Yes.
It's told the story. So that's really great. So let's talk about your work at We Deliver Your Vision. What kind of companies are you working with? Like, who's the ideal type of customer for what you guys are looking to help with?
So over the years through my career, I started as an employee, then worked for Ernst & Young and Deloitte, Big Four, and then self-employed in my own business. I've worked with pretty much every size of company, from the big multi-billion-dollar multinationals and internationals all the way down to the 5-person lawyer team looking to introduce AI. Our favorite company in terms of where we get the most impact is typically the 50 to 500 people. So the smaller, medium-sized manufacturing companies that wanting to grow, they're established, they have a good, solid sales cycle. But in today's environment with various economic constraints and changes in the economy, they need to adjust how they're working, or they might be running up against a backlog of inventory. So, and they're busy. To your point earlier, is how do we find the time to make these improvements when we're keeping the lights on, running the day-to-day operations? And this is where we can provide that second set of eyes to help give perspective on how a company can improve and reduce that backlog, even if they have an existing ERP, because typically the existing systems are doing okay, but changes to them are very difficult. So there's usually ways around that shortcut to find the constraint, the first constraint, and then work through it with typically just visibility. How do we understand exactly what the constraint is and how do we fix it, which starts with the process mapping.
And is this where you've got you mentioned that 5-step process? Is that a process to help identify where that constraint is?
Yes, exactly that. So finding the constraint, that first step is the process mapping, and that we had the 5 steps and we went through it quite quickly. But that first step is a workshop of, I love getting in front of people, putting Post-it notes on a whiteboard and literally walking through. I always like to start with this one question. If I dropped a work order or a new order with you today, right now, what would it take to run from order to delivery without stopping once? And then we just map out that process. You have many processes, but just pick the high volume one, the one you deal with most, or the highest value customer. Put new order. How does it work through the process step by step? And even in the room with the different teams, you'll get I didn't know you did that, or I do this because I know how it works in reality. The system doesn't do it properly, so I have to do it in this spreadsheet. And that's the gold for me, is where you see people realize what other teams do, and you can see their brains firing, going, okay, why don't we change this, or why don't we remove this approval? So even before the session ends, we're finding improvements just by helping the team articulate what happens today.
That's such interesting work that happens there. And there's so many, I guess, common patterns that you see repeated a lot, like just the individual bias that somebody has, like, kind of what they can see as their whole world in these processes. And so when you put them together in it sounds like a value stream mapping type exercise, and they all of a sudden this visibility to this other stuff. And, sometimes you see like that light bulb turn on for somebody, like, oh, I had no idea why we do this thing. It's important because of that. Or, or, the opposite of that is where you're doing something and nobody in the room can answer why that's being done. It's just some legacy step that somebody thought needed to be done that no longer needs to be done. That's interesting.
Exactly. It starts to take over your mind. So once you start breaking things down into projects of steps and processes, then you end up seeing everything from making a cup of tea and the steps involved all the way through to watching a movie, back in watching a Star Wars movie or whatever. You see the steps involved, and you have to just park that sometimes, because otherwise it takes it to a different level.
It's funny, you mentioned, you see the world through models and processes, and I resonate through that. It reminds me of a bit of I guess I'd call it a joke that you'll either get or you won't, is that the world is filled with two kinds of people that think in process and models, and people that don't.
Right, yes, exactly. Yep.
So, but I do find that interesting, is when you do get talking to people that do see the world through that lens, it opens up just such an interesting conversation that takes the shape of flowcharts and sticky notes and arrows, and just a very interesting conversation. Now, when you talk about theory of constraints, the theory of constraints is that there's one constraint that's holding up the process or holding up the goal. Like you mentioned growth. So many organizations have this growth goal. I think you mentioned that there's like a company that you've been working with recently that had a big growth goal but was struggling to maybe achieve it, and you went through some of this process and found some interesting, maybe non-intuitive things along the way. Could you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yes, for sure, because we were called in by a manufacturing company, a plastics manufacturing company, who called me up and said, our customers are complaining of short shipping and delayed deliveries, and we need a new ERP system. Just replace it. And I said, that's not your answer. It's going to be a multi-tens of $million project. It's going to take years. Let's look at exactly why your customers are complaining. And after doing some analysis, the process workshops, and didn't take long, took less than a few hours, we realized that the sales team was selling products that weren't in stock. So they were promising delivery dates that couldn't be met by the production team, which sounds obvious. You'd think a production facility that had been going decades, they had a long history and were very successful, but customer complaints were increasing, is just the sales team promising dates without full visibility of what the production team could actually produce. So we created a very quick report from the ERP. We used Power BI, extracted the data, and every day we sent a report to the sales team saying, these are the products in stock. This is the inventory available. So we know with certainty we can deliver these products by a certain date. These products, talk to the production team and the schedulers to come up with a new date. And that almost overnight reduced all of the customer complaints, because suddenly orders were on time. It wasn't the ERP, it wasn't the delivery team, it wasn't the production team. It was purely a lack of visibility about what's in stock with the sales team. And that was both an eye-opener for us in terms of we felt good about the quick win that we could give them, and also not accepting, back to the theory of constraints, that constraint was perceived to be the ERP, but the constraint moves. So even though we then found the real constraint, which was the visibility, it then actually compounded because now the sales team was selling products in stock. That actually put more pressure on the production team. So back to the theory of constraints book, the constraint will move. We'll move to another one. Once you solve one, it's like whack-a-mole. You have to then find the next one. So then we had to fix the next problem. But either way, we achieved the growth target.
That's such an interesting problem, and folks that do this kind of work, I'm sure, have seen that kind of thing come up. Now, I want to drill into this problem a little bit because there's also, in this work specifically, one of the things that I find so interesting about this is that it's very technical and analytical in one sense, but it's also very human and emotional in another sense, right? Yeah. Somebody in that organization had in their head that we need a new ERP. And if it's a highly placed executive, sometimes that's a harder belief to disrupt. In this particular situation, did you have some work to get them to where, it might not be the ERP that's the problem?
For sure. And perception is everything. You want to meet any person where they are. It's a life lesson and a project and a business decision is, how do you meet your customer where they're at? So there are two tracks to the project. One is, yes, sure, we can start to plan out that ERP replacement and upgrade. On the flip side, you don't want to wait 18 months, 2 years for that to be done and go through the cost and expense just yet. So here's some alternatives. And it's all about giving options and choices. If they were insistent on this is the path to go, then absolutely we would support them on that to a point. If it really didn't make sense, we'd have to say we're not the company to work with on that. In reality, what happened is the client, after some initial resistance and some concern, understood that the quick win around sharing that sales report with the sales team was the best way to go quickly. And since then, they use that every day. And then we've had this ongoing relationship for many years since.
So in identifying that constraint, you mentioned that the constraint actually moves either in numbers or percentages. You were working on this growth target. How ambitious was this growth target that you were working on there?
It was ambitious. So they wanted to move from 80 million revenue to 100 million revenue in 1 year. So 20 million increase. Yeah.
20% growth at 80 million. Yeah. You can't just do exactly what you did last year.
No, exactly. So it needed some big changes. So although the sales report eliminated the customer complaints and did increase the revenue, there was actually a program of activities, including an acquisition, that were in play to actually achieve that result. The big learning for the company and us at the time was that if they'd have done the acquisition, which would double the production revenue, production capacity, the complaints would probably double as well because they weren't solving that one constraint around the sales team selling products that weren't in stock. So, and I always go back to when I'm called up to say, we need to do AI. We need to put AI into our business and automate or a new system. And a bad process automated is still a bad process, and AI and automation will just make a situation worse unless that situation is good. So in the example of the plastics manufacturer, introducing any automation or AI to a process to accelerate and increase production would just result in more complaints. Yes, you might have more revenue, but you're held back by that constraint of customer complaining. So getting to that constraint bottleneck is so important.
So what were some of the intermediate metrics that you were optimizing around or were identifying as constraints?
Yes, and it always boils down to any project or any process change we make has to be measured success. So we always have that baseline of, I like to work with 3 metrics because anything more than that gets difficult to manage. Starting with 3 works well, and then increase it later on once you're achieving your target. So in this example with the plastics manufacturer, the 3 metrics we worked with was the revenue, because they wanted to increase their revenue target to the 100 million. The on-time delivery, because customers were complaining of short shipping and late product delivery. And then the third one was the inventory backlog value. So we reported on a dollar value on how much inventory was just sitting on the floor in stock, not running through the production. So the combination of the on-time delivery, the revenue, and the inventory meant that we could actually show how dealing with these three KPIs would ultimately achieve their growth targets of the revenue overall.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like you identified somewhat of might use it as like a balanced scorecard to look at different things that each one of those could be optimized at perhaps the cost of the other. So keeping an eye on all three helps you improve the overall system. That's a very interesting one.
And just to build on that as well, another book that I love is How Big Things Get Done by Ben Flyvberg. It's all about construction projects, actually. So the Sydney Opera House and the Montreal Olympic Stadium. It's all around big, massive construction projects and how they were done, and some of the failures and some of the learnings. And so what Ben went into is the three things I took away from that book around the outside perspective, the inside perspective, and also the testing and just going, because we spend a long time in planning. And planning is a good thing. Preparing for something is good, but you also just need to start testing it. So with an AI project or a process improvement project or creating a KPI balanced scorecard, build something and ship it in front of your customers, internal customers or external customers, get that feedback quickly, but also get the perspective from outside perspective, be it forums, internet, consultants, experts, Gartner, whoever, but also include the inside experts, the people who do this day to day. So with the inside, outside, and the testing, that's going to deliver your project and your process improvement and your goals much, much quicker. And that was one of the key things I took away from massive construction projects.
That sounds like an interesting book. I love book recommendations, so I have to write that one down. That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Are you struggling to ignite real change in your continuous improvement program? Firestarter is your field guide. Real stories, proven strategies, no fluff. Get it now on Amazon. So you were talking a little bit about AI just a minute ago. This is a topic I would say everybody is interested in doing stuff with AI. There's a lot of people who are, hear the term like token maxing, like just using AI to use AI to a certain extent. But you were advocating a different approach with AI. What are some of the real business metric problems, maybe process problems that people could pursue, or you've seen people pursue, where AI was the solution to the business problem rather than AI was just used for the sake of using AI?
Yes. And we're seeing this a lot, actually, especially with token usage and bills exploding. Just the other day, I was at an IBM conference on a developer day, and the IBM lead was talking about incurring $3,000 or $4,000 of token usage overnight from an automation they'd set off and were running. And it's very easy to, with Claude Cowork or any of the Copilot automations, is to have them run in the background and burn up tokens, which you only see after the fact when you've suddenly got a bill. So I always boil this down to three steps for any AI or automation project, which is the 3 R's. So what you're looking to change has to be rule-based. There's rules in terms of specific things it can and can't do. It has to be result-driven, as in there's an output or outcome that you specifically know to measure. And the third point is it's repeatable, something you're doing on a regular basis that you know someone else, the automation, could do. So when it's rule-based, results-based, and repeatable, then it's a good candidate for AI. But it's also, more importantly, easier to control that as a proof of concept, a small project to test and scale before you automate the whole end-to-end process. A great example for business owners, entrepreneurs is logging leads and having conversations with customers, and then updating your CRM, your customer relationship management system. So the example of having a conversation with a customer, taking notes, and then updating your CRM system is repeatable. You do it on an often basis. It's results-based. The record is updated in your CRM, your Salesforce, and it's results-driven. You have that record logged, and you have a follow-up to call them back or respond to their request. So that's a very quick, simple automation that you can prove out and do quickly without burning up tokens or cost, because it's very controllable. It's not automatically updating lots and lots of workflows. It's just doing one specific thing that's repeatable, results-based, and rule-driven.
I like that. I love hearing frameworks and models, and I'm curious just to ask you a few questions about other frameworks and models that you like to refer to, or that you've kind of either picked up or developed or just refer to frequently. Are there some others that are on your short list of favorite models along that line?
For sure. And we talked about the 5-step framework that we use, and that's part of the production flow model that we use with our clients, which I'm happy to share with your audience. If they just comment flow in the comments below, I'll send you a copy of that. No obligation, no sign up, but just something you can take away and use to work through your own constraint assessment for automation or hitting the growth targets. And then building on that, we mentioned the outputs versus outcomes. And that's where I go back to a framework of the 3 Fs, the functionality that something has to achieve, the feelings, how it's going to make me feel, and then the facts about when it's going to be delivered. So, for example, on a simple example of a board report that you're creating, the functionality means it needs to be in PowerPoint. It has have these certain graphs and charts, and it needs to tell me the budget and forecasting as an example. The facts are I need that report by next Tuesday, and it needs to have the PowerPoint format ready to go with a summary email to send out to all the directors. More importantly, the feeling, and this is where it really helps define the outcome, is the feeling for that board report is I have confidence in the numbers I'm sharing, but more importantly, I have predictions on the future in terms of here's how the forecast will go, and more importantly, here's the impact on our business. So the feeling I get and that my directors get coming out of that report are confidence in terms of the plan to address the budget and forecast for the coming year. So using that facts, feelings, and functionality framework for outputs and outcomes rather than outputs is absolutely key.
I like that. The focus on the feeling part there is kind of interesting to me. How do you ask that feeling question when you're doing that evaluation? How does that question present? Like, how do you feel about this process?
Believe it or not, it's as simple as how do you feel about this? It's amazing, and maybe it's my background in growing up in financial services. My first job out of university after studying electrical engineering was into financial sales. Came out of university, had to get a job, loved IT and technology, but at the time the opportunity didn't present itself, and then needing to earn money, got into financial sales, selling life and pensions and investments and advice over the telephone, and learned a lot about customer service, but more importantly, learned to be curious. And that's set me up for my career ever since in terms of just asking people questions to understand their situation, because then you can serve them better. And back to your point, Keith, the key question around how do you feel about something is literally that. How are you feeling about this? What does it make you feel is such a simple question, but so easily missed, because I initially when I was asking that question is, what if they say something I can't deal with, or what if they say something awkward or about me? And in reality, over 30 years of asking that question, I don't think I've ever had a difficult response to that. It's always been, okay, that's interesting. Here's how we can help more, or here's someone I can put you in touch with, or here's someone I can connect you with. Even if I can't help, I know someone who can.
I think I love that question because, again, this intersection of analytical and numbers and, Six Sigma analysis and data, but also a question as simple as how are you feeling about this? Like, I mean, just to use a random Starbucks example, like it's one thing if you ordered the coffee and they delivered it quick, but if the experience didn't feel good, if it didn't taste good or whatever, like sometimes there's metrics that are very important that can actually be kind of hard to quantify, and feeling might be one of those where it's a very important question. Sometimes it's may not be the easiest thing to put a number on exactly, but it's very useful feedback there. So I like that.
It is, and I know because I've had to learn it. Growing up in the as we mentioned, the Lego, the technical, the process, the kits, and then electrical engineering, and then computer science. I was the classic nerd and geek, and even my wife, bless her, we've been married over 20 years now, but she'll sometimes call me an emotional robot because I go back to that process ones and zeros as opposed to, okay, how are we feeling about this? So me learning this for my own personal development has been huge as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact about being curious, and that's another theme that I've really heard a lot in these conversations and these people that devote their lives to this kind of work. And it's always fun when you get to a point where you kind of know who your people are and like the conversations and like this is a thing that other people share. That curiosity. I'm curious if there's some examples of maybe things through your work that were just super interesting, or maybe like unique experiences that you were involved with. You said something to me previously about some work with like a locomotive company, which is like, most people probably don't get to do stuff like that every single day. Are there some experiences that you've had in your work that were really quite interesting or satisfied that curiosity that you have?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to a example from early in my career. Actually, this is dating ourselves, but we went through the year 2000 bug and the fixes. And then at the time, there was with the financial services company I was working with, there was a big project to roll out new laptops to the sales force who went out to customers and physically visited them in their homes or offices for the financial services selling and insurance and savings and investments. And massive projects, multi-million-dollar project to give them better laptops, which would process quotes quicker, streamline the application forms, and issue insurance policies quicker. And on paper, it was a huge success. It achieved everything. The policies were issued quicker, the appointment time was lower, revenue was up, and the sales force were visiting more people. The problem was again, back to that customer complaints, because one of the biggest complaints we got about the whole new process was where are my flowers and chocolates? And what was happening is, but previously with the sales reps would visit the customer, sell them the policy. And when the policy was issued, they'd come back with a physical bit of paper with flowers and chocolates celebrating this new policy.
Yeah.
And this Salesforce automation, this new laptop took away the opportunity to do that. So, and we were known as the company was known as the friendly society. It was built on customer service. So although revenue was up, profits were up, we were selling more policies, customer complaints and customer satisfaction was not in a good place. So we had to change that. And I learned a real hard lesson around, just because on paper something delivers and you achieve your KPIs, understanding the feelings that the customers were experiencing around that is so important. In this case, where are my flowers and chocolates?
That's a funny story. I remember hearing a story at some point, it kind of fits in the bucket of it could be an old wives' tale at this point, but a cost savings initiative at a large bank decided to cut out the suckers at the drive-through. And there was a client of ours that would come through and make a deposit, every day, and would have her kids in the car, and they'd give them a sucker, and they cut the suckers out, and caused a dissatisfaction, and they lost one of their biggest customers because they felt like you'd changed this thing. And it just I think that's such an interesting, in this pursuit of what value add is in interactions. Sometimes it's I think about this with a lot of customer service interactions, because in some cases, generally you would think it's better if you don't have any problems. You don't have to talk to the customers. You don't have to, spend that money. But I think that sometimes there's actually a relationship element that gets built through those interactions. And when you take out those interactions, I wonder if it, can affect the relationship. So
I'm often asked, especially by graduates, in terms of what given AI and how jobs are changing and AI is going to take over the world, is what's the key skill? What should I learn to do?
Yeah.
And I always go back to skills that I'm still continuing to learn, because it's never ending, is the marketing, the communication, the relationships, the connections with people, because people want to buy from people. And back to your point around the feelings, how you are presenting yourself, people pick up on that. They understand, they can sense the feelings you have towards them, your feelings about a situation. And another example I use is, we do dog agility training. We have 3 dogs. We have 2 border collies, and we run our border collies through the agility course. So the jumps, the tunnels, the teeter-totter and weave poles. how you're feeling about directing the dog and our dog Kyla to run through the obstacles is night and day in terms of how they'll perform, because they are truly looking to you for guidance, instructions, and they will do anything you want and run as fast as they can. But they're looking for you for that guidance and leadership to understand, okay, what do I do next? And how do I attack this obstacle? And how do I get around cleanly? So you having that mental feeling of positivity and leadership and guidance and positive reinforcement is absolutely key, which just applies to everything in life, and to the point where I need to probably do a new YouTube channel of leadership lessons from my dog to build this out more.
I did see something either on your YouTube or on your LinkedIn where you'd said something about how working with your border collie teaches you about working with technology. I don't know if you remember that post.
Yes, and again, it's having that clear vision and direction, because our border collie is 6 years old and she's amazing. She's so energetic, and if anyone has border collies, they are just so smart. So she will correct me if once we've walked the course, she's already got it in her head. I'm still trying to remember the 15 obstacles that we need to go around. And if I make a mistake, she'll sometimes correct me and carry on in the right way. So it's all down to that vision, which I apply to technology projects of what's the end goal here, or how do I make sure that I'm thinking ahead, ready to guide her, which just applies to technology. Same with AI. AI is like a border collie. It'll do anything you want as fast as it can, but you have to direct it in the right way. So giving it that leadership, guidance, feedback, and direction is absolutely key to any AI project.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned things like Y2K, and I've had this thought recently that a lot of this, like the end is here with AI. It's gonna ruin everything. It reminds me of some of the talk around the Y2K, like everything could cease to function. The electricity could stop. The trains could stop. The water could stop flowing.
Yeah.
The year 2000, and then it ticked over, and we all lived. It was all okay.
So I need to dig it up. I still have the booklet that the government produced in the UK, where they sent it to every household. So this is 50 odd million households. They sent around a booklet saying, here's what to expect, here's what will happen, here's what won't happen. So planes won't drop out the sky. You will be able to go to the petrol station or gas pump and continue to get money out of the bank. But it got to that level of concern where the government felt it had to send publications, physical printed documents to every household to reassure them that things would be okay.
So having lived through, one or more of those, highly emotionally charged states, like impending doom potential, and the lessons that you learned through that, how does that better arm you to deal with like what's coming next with AI, or what are some of the lessons that people can learn from those previous technology innovations that can help them be prepared for this next one that's very much in process with AI?
So the high level message is, you've got this. You've dealt with things before. You can do it again. And I'll illustrate that with an example of my own personal life. My wife has had cancer twice and survived. So she's a trooper. She's an incredibly strong woman and inspiration to me and my business and every day. So knowing that she's been through that and she can survive and move on, and yes, there are bad things that are going to happen to people, and not everything is in our control, and some of it is truly devastating. But most of our things in most day to day, we can deal with it. And even if you can't deal with it, there'll be something after it. So with AI, it's not life-threatening in my view. It's, yes, there may be significant change coming because of it, but just know in our business, corporate environments, there are tough times, absolutely. And I don't want to diminish any layoffs or situations that cause distress, but know that there is a path on the other side. This too will pass is a great phrase. And something I do every day, given our life experience, is reflect on what's gone well and what could be good tomorrow and the upcoming day, and use it as fire. When my wife had cancer, that fired us to move to Canada, leave the UK. There's something better out there for us. So let's just up everything and move to another country. And second time was then we're starting the business. We want to spend more time together and really make a difference. So let's build the business. So yes, it's tough. Take the time you need to get through whatever you're going through, but then use that as fuel, use that as fire to drive you forward to make a difference and change something going forward.
Yeah, I'm trying to. There's a leadership quote on that topic of never underestimate the value of a good crisis to motivate people to get to
Yes.
get stuff done. Right, like things.
Yep.
I think of COVID. Right, like COVID was a terrible time,
Right.
but look at all the innovative, interesting things. Like you were even talking about, like that Starbucks, order from the app and pick your like. I'm assuming that was done after 2020.
Right.
So many stores that didn't offer delivery, didn't offer in-car pickup, like pretty significant process changes for them as an organization. They wouldn't have gone out of their way to start offering curbside delivery when you could perfectly well come up to the counter and get your thing before that. So
exactly.
Yeah,
and that's the thing, that the AI is very much a moving train. It's coming, it's moving. We need to get on it, or at least be aware of where it's going to the best of our knowledge. So back to what we said earlier is be curious. Just ask yourself questions around, okay, how would I use AI, or how is someone else using AI? Even if it's going onto YouTube and watching robots falling over, you'll still get a sense of what it can and can't do, which is just good information. Even if you're not using it right here, right now, it's being aware of it and know that the future is, I truly believe the future is bright. There is opportunity. There are things changing. Anyone can spin up a business now with AI. It really has removed the barrier to entry for a new business, because the AI can set your marketing plan, understand your product, create your lead generation, even script your conversations. It's on a plate. So that, to me, is fire to say, yep, I have all these tools available to me, and a lot of them are free. Is, okay, how do I use it? What can we do next? And just be curious about testing things out.
Yeah, it's so true. Like if you have the initiative, if you have the vision to, kind of tie back into your part of your company name there, it's probably never been easier to execute and to find answers to some of these things that might have felt like huge obstacles in the past. I've heard you say a couple of times a strategy for working with AI, about using AI as like an assistant or an intern or something. Maybe you could restate that for us about that particular strategy.
Yes, it's. I was reading an article the other day actually around AI is giving permission for people to suddenly hire thousands of people without any training or any management. And you would never do that in business in reality. So what I'm referring to is people can now spin up an AI agent within minutes to do things like invoice approvals or expense claims or reporting. And these are jobs that people were doing. So if you see it as you're hiring hundreds of people through your agents to do work, if you were hiring a new person in reality, in person, you'd be giving them training, guidance, feedback, understanding, reviewing their results. And the same applies for AI, which is why, back to your point that I made before around treat AI like an intern, treat AI like a new hire. And back to that example of the updating the CRM with the 3 R's, is just pick one process, because you would never give a new joiner or a new hire access to all of your systems and approving all of the invoices. They have to work up to it. Then you don't give someone a CEO role without CEO experience. Likewise, an analyst or programmer or director. Same with AI. Treat it like someone coming in, give it very specific results to achieve that are repeatable. And more importantly, back to KPIs, how do you measure their performance? What are they doing well? What are they not doing well? How many CRM updates are they doing per day that are accurate versus not accurate? And understanding that can then tune how you use it to then build out a stronger person, AI, that's working in your business or for your company.
I think that's such great advice. And from a career progression, career ladder, even if you're somebody that hasn't had management experience, now you've got AI, you can be a manager of this AI intern, right?
Right.
And if you're somebody who has been a manager, you understand, hopefully a little bit of what it's like to have somebody report to you and to validate and verify and, all those things that you would need to do. So now, yeah, you've got the potential to do more of that.
Yes.
So interesting. Well, John, I have a set of I call these the rapid fire questions. So these are just kind of top of mind answers, finish this sentence sort of questions. First one: the most important job of a leader is to
be curious. So that's understanding what your team and your people you're leading are about, what they personally want to achieve. Because if you understand that, you can work with them to benefit not only your company and what you need as a leader, but also how they would benefit. So if it's more time with their family, okay, cool. How do we work your job to achieve it? So being curious is that number one question.
Love it. That's a good answer. Do you have a favorite go-to problem-solving tool, a model that you like to refer to? Favorite tool that you pull out of your toolbox most frequently?
Yeah, I'll go back to the outcomes versus output. So we want to focus on the outcomes. So it comes back to the facts, the feelings, and the functionality of what are we trying to achieve, and really focusing on the value that we give to someone, even if it's ourselves. If we're doing something for ourselves, is what's the outcome result? And more importantly, as we picked up earlier, is the feelings that you'll achieve or see and feel as a result of doing that work.
Excellent. Thank you. Do you have a favorite question?
How are you feeling about this?
Okay, that's a good one.
And also, and also, why now? Sometimes when you're feeling a little overwhelmed, is you have to push back and on some of your team and some of your clients say, why now and when do you need it by? Because in this day and age, things are getting busier and busy for everyone. So just understanding the date, how are you feeling about this and why now is probably my two favorite questions.
That's great. You mentioned a couple of books to us. Is there a favorite book that you recommend, or maybe another one you want to add to the list of the ones that you've already shared with us?
Other than the How Big Things Get Done by Ben Flyberg is very, very good. It's just an entertaining read about big construction projects. I'm a big fan of the E-Myth Revisited, especially because it talks about the integrator and visionary and how any project or business needs both to run efficiently and well and grow and scale. I come from the integrator background, the doer, the process guy, the behind the scenes getting things done. And my wife is very much the visionary. So I've learned a lot about, for my own business and being married to my wife, how do I become more of a visionary and how do I understand visionaries to apply to my personal development and growth as well.
So interesting. Good recommendation there. Tell us something that you're looking forward to. What are you fired up about, excited, looking forward to?
So on a business side, I'm looking forward to where we can take We Deliver Your Vision. It's an exciting time to be alive with AI and the opportunity out there. I know there's a lot of concerns around the economy and there's constraints out there, but there is truly ways we can help more people. And I do see a lot of good faith in the world around people just wanting to help each other, which gives me satisfaction and heartwarming feelings. And then on a more personal level, just looking forward to more dog training with our border collies and helping them be the best dogs they can, which in turn means I can be the best trainer and guider and leader of them.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining us here today on the podcast. Appreciate your insights. Do you want to share a website or a link, or how could folks get in touch with you or follow up with you?
Yeah, for sure. Best place to check me out is on the posting and social media we do on LinkedIn. So check out John Hetherington on LinkedIn. And then, of course, also my YouTube channel at the John Hetherington, and also our website, wedeliveryourvision.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate your time today. And for our listeners, if you want to suggest a guest, ask a question, you can share ideas for episodes or content, you can reach out to me also on LinkedIn, Keith C. Norris. And this concludes this episode of KPI Fireside, a continuous improvement podcast. If you've enjoyed the episode today, be sure to add a comment. You can drop what was the tag that you said there, John, to receive the flow, production flow?
Yeah, if you comment flow below, then I'll send the 5-step framework for assessing the constraint and growth in your business.
Perfect. And Certainly like, follow, subscribe on all the socials. Share the podcast with your friends or colleagues who are as passionate about continuous improvement as you are. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, keep driving progress and sparking change. This episode is brought to you by KPI Fire, the all-in-one platform for continuous improvement. With KPI Fire, you can align strategy, drive execution, and engage your people. So whether you're leading a team or driving enterprise-wide change, KPI Fire helps you deliver real results. Learn more at www.kpifire.com.